such an incredible experience. Once in a lifetime, I will never forget this one. Hey guys, it's Karl. So just came back from this crazy trip. I was actually in Europe for my 7th final wedding of the season, headed on over to Naples with OPPO to see a Champions League game, as OPPO is the official Champions League smartphone sponsor. We also did a walking tour to kind of check out the city, but the main thing that I wanted to check out was, of course, Napoli against Rangers. A lot of you actually don't know that I used to play football when I was a younger guy. When I was 16, played for PSV Eindhoven for a couple years. So kind of going back to my roots, seeing a game pitch side, absolutely blown, speechless. The energy of the stadium, the fans, the atmosphere, the Champions League song. Was all incredible. I'm literally just grinning ear to ear. It was my first Champions League game that I've been to, and to experience a pitchside experience. And I know some of the footage, it's quite limited in what I can share, just because UEFA has pretty strict principles for content creators for sharing footage, so I technically couldn't get any player IP. So what I can share is just, my behind the scenes experience plus some of my pitch side stuff. I couldn't record any of the players, so bear with me with some of the footage. We'll kind of get to the phone itself though, as a actual device. So this is of course the Reno 8 Pro 5G. It's been out now for a couple months, and that telltale sign, the partnership with UEFA Champions League, which is the main reason why I went to check out this device. And if you look at this phone, it's unique in a couple ways. First off, we'll go through the design. So the colorway, this is an interesting one. It's in a color called glazed green. It's very bright and light, almost a bit minty. It really reminds me of the summer. And for the rest of the device, it's pretty much how I build my dream smartphone. So I'm a huge fan of straight edges all the way around. I like to have that feeling of hard corners. Even on the front of the display, which is 6.7 inches, we have none of the rounded glass, which I'm a particular fan of. So even if you have a screen protector on, it won't have any of that weird runoff area. But the main point of this vid is to talk about the camera system on the back, which is one of the best that I've used. And trust me, I test smartphones out for a living. I even will compare this against my iPhone 14 Pro Max, which I think is one of the best, if not the best in the game. So this is built around a 50 megapixel main sensor, but more importantly uses Silicon X, which is OPPO's in-house built NPU, their neural processing unit. We saw that first with the OPPO Find X5 Pro earlier in the year at MWC, and it's essentially OPPO's answer to create the best image quality. We see most in-house chips being built by most manufacturers now, Apple, Google being the top two that come to mind. But this chip essentially helps a ton with image processing, which will help with low light performance, stabilization, contrast ratios, dynamic range, etc., etc. It essentially just makes your image look better for the end user. And from the sample shots that you see here, I was pretty blessed to kind of test this out in all of the extreme situations in Naples, taking photos of architecture to a lot of the lattes that I was sipping kind of midday to recharge. And even when we went to the game later at night, the image quality on this is one of the better ones that I've seen on Android, and it can compete with what we've got going over on the iPhone, which, trust me, that says a lot. And I know that's a lot of hype towards the main 50 megapixel main, but when you switch to, say, the ultra wide, that unfortunately drops down in res. And the one thing that I did notice when I switched to, say, like that ultra wide into the portrait or even into some of the macro, it just didn't take as crispy photos. So if you want the best performance out of this, just stick to the main 50 megapixel shooter. Sometimes it gets confusing because when you switch to the ultra wide, you sometimes forget to switch back to that little 50 megapixel thing. So it just says that at the top of the photo thing. It's sometimes easy to forget that you're not using that. And when you switch on over to video, same kind of thing. When you go to the ultra wide setting, that tones that down to 1080p. So if you want to stick to 4K, you unfortunately just have to toggle that little switch. And like I said, it's sometimes easy to forget you aren't recording in that 4K setting, which will get you the best results for video and of course for photo. It also has a dedicated night mode option, which I didn't really have to use as much as I needed. Once again, that MeriSeal Connects, that little NPU chip, really helps out a lot with low light performance. Nighttime video was fully usable, which I can't quite say the same for most of its competitors that this really stacks up against. And even stabilization, I did buy a little stabilizer, which I actually didn't have to use. So all of this video footage is actually handheld and you can get by totally fine just using the device on its own. So super, super impressed. On the front though, we have a 32 megapixel front facing camera. I did find it a little bit soft, a little bit unsaturated sometimes. I'll take a little sample pic here. And for some reason, the video quality looks a bit more saturated, but once again, I think that can be tweaked in a lot of software. So super, super impressed. I'll also leave a couple sample shots, like I said, between my iPhone, which I know that a lot of people love to compare to. And even though the camera is the main reason why I would grab this phone, it isn't a slouch on the flip side either. So it is rocking MediaTek's Dimensity 8100 Max. It is rocking Android 12 with ColorOS over top. Maybe the one thing that still kind of annoys me is some of the bloatware that comes pre-installed on the device. So you've got things like Bubble Boxes Match 3D, Rolling Twins, Tilemaster 3D, Lords Mobile. All of this stuff I'll probably end up uninstalling. At least there are no unwanted ads running on the phone. It does have a 4,500 milliamp hour battery inside, and even on my most heavy use days, I was getting around 6-ish hours of screen on time. So when I was shooting 4K video, when I was on GPS trying to figure out where I was in Naples, I was near the end by midnight. I had a couple percent left, but it does have a supercharger inside. It's an 80-watt SuperVOOC charger, so the worst case, you just need to plug it in for 10 minutes, which will get you juice for the rest of the day. Don't expect to get a day and a half or anywhere close to 2 days. Even if you are pretty medium to light usage, I would definitely recommend charging this probably every night. And lastly, the display, which I mentioned, it's got a quick refresh rate, 6.7 inches. It's full AMOLED. It gets around 500 nits of brightness, close to 1,000, I believe 950 peak nit brightness. So it doesn't get as bright as, say, the iPhone or other devices. It doesn't have that same saturation as, say, Samsung displays, which I know some people either love or hate that. I think this is kind of right in the middle, which it isn't too overdone or too over bright. Obviously, the phone has no stylus and it doesn't even have wireless charging on the back. So if those things are important, there's other options. But like I said, the main reason to get a Reno device is just to kind of focus on the camera system. Obviously, I might be slightly biased with the experience that I got. Seeing a Champions League game firsthand was pretty incredible. But even the stuff that I posted on Instagram, all of my photos that day or for that trip, and even some of the reels that I shot, all done with the OPPO Reno 8 Pro. So I hope you guys enjoyed this vid. This is definitely one of the most unique phones of the year, just in terms of the looks. Of course, that's that unique mint green colorway, the very large sensors on the back. It's definitely a bit iconic and really stands out from the rest of the crowd. Hope you guys enjoyed it, like I said, and maybe I'll give this device away as my Champions League experience is done. You can get this device, that I went to Naples with. So just make sure you're subbed to the channel, comment down below, and just incredible, incredible times. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've said that 3 times. We'll catch the rest of you in one of my next ones. Peace.